Hello, my name is Jason and I am the Game Meowster. I cover everything Pathfinder 2nd Edition, including in-depth adventure path reviews, advice for players, and tips on how to hit the elite template on your GMing. I'm also a full-time professional game master, so if you would like to play a game with me, check me out on startplaying.com, links below. Today we're here to begin an 11 or so part series on the Abomination Vaults, taking a highly detailed look at this adventure, level by level, room by room, to give you a complete breakdown on what's good, what's meh, and what I think that you can change to keep your players on their toes. Fair warning to players though, this review is going to be chock full of spoilers, so please stay tuned for an upcoming video or let your soul be taken by a Grothold. We're going to start with Otari. Otari is a small logging town that provides the backdrop to the Abomination Vaults and gives the PCs a safe place to rest and resupply in between dives into the dungeon. I think it's very easy to let Otari become just a little bit more than a place for people to sleep and buy stuff and just become bored with it and just skip and head back to the dungeon. But there's actually a ton of really interesting things going on here. Let's do a quick overview of the history of Otari. About 500 years ago, the witch Belcora was driven out of Absalon for performing dark magics and rituals and just overall being a real jerk. She moseyed on over to the area now known as Otari, drawn by a dark vision, and began construction on the Gauntlet and the dungeons below. Eventually, this drew the attention of a group of adventurers known as the Rose Guard. They slew the witch, but at the cost of one of their own, the party rogue, Otari Ilvashti. Deciding that they had lost the taste for adventure, the remaining members of the Rose Guard settled the area and founded the town, naming it after their fallen friend, Otari. Something to keep in mind as the campaign progresses is the location support on page 10. These are fantastic ways to give small rewards to your players as the campaign goes on. It makes them feel like the people of Otari really appreciate what they're doing. There's 9 suggested rewards there, so using 1 per level is pretty close to good. Feel free to make up anything your own. Just use some of these as like the default to give you some guidance on what an appropriate award should look like. Something I did was giving them a bonus to their recall knowledge checks over at the Dawnflower Library. There's some early encounters that they will likely need a hand with, and this came in real handy for them. Players love any kind of reward that will keep them engaged with the town. I'm using the official module that you can find on Foundry. It's a fantastic resource. Honestly, I don't think there's another way to run this unless you're dedicated like real world tabletop. In all case, more power to you. But as far as online play goes, you can't beat the official module. I'm not sponsored or anything, and they didn't ask me to say that, but it's just a fact. So looking at this beautiful map of Otari, this is going to give you the complete overview. Now, you can also, if you zoom out here, you're going to see that the Gauntlet is way up here in the northwest corner. Now, this is about a 20-minute walk, as the module says, so it's located close enough that they're never too far away from town, too far away from a rest. So, we're going to begin our look at Otari with Menhemes Manor. So, the relationship with Osef Menhemes and Otari is a pretty interesting one. He's been elected mayor 4 times running, and he's also in charge of Otari Lumber, making him also one of the richest men in town. While there are other lumber companies in town, like the Whistledown Cutters, run by the Inkelholtz family, and the struggling Churtel Timber, Otari Lumber is by far the most successful. The book never really implies that Otari was using his position to keep the lumber companies down, but it'd be more interesting if he was, right? Or at least that was implied by a couple of NPCs. When the party's talking to him, I liked him to play him as reasonable but stuck in his ways, aloof and slightly arrogant. The party should feel like they can come to him, but that there also might be more than meets the eye with Osef. A bit of foreshadowing from the beginning can lead to some really interesting situations later. Osef has a daughter named Doriana. She has latent psychic powers that nobody is aware of at the start of the campaign, but again, if you want some foreshadowing, have Rin drop some suspicions about Doriana's powers. She is suffering from terrible nightmares that are linked to a creature known as the Motley Man located deep in the dungeon, but we're going to have to come back to him later. I made a really big change to Doriana, and I feel like it improved the Otari dynamic in a big way for my players. The book describes her as being a child of maybe like 10 or so, but I aged her up dramatically. I told my players that she was in her mid to late 20s, and that she was romantically involved with Carmen Rajani, the town blacksmith, who is also kind of like the bad boy, who has a big problem with her father, Osef. This is going to inject some delicious drama into your campaign, as Osef is frustrated that his daughter is with this guy who ran against him for mayor and has some pretty legit criminal activity in his past. I will cover more about this relationship when I get to Carmen, but this is a big change that I made that got me results from my players. Rin's Wonders is the home to Rin Sinvixi, the quest giver for the campaign. I wrote out a little intro for my players describing them sitting down for a harrow reading and describing the lighthouse coming to life for the first time. It was pretty spooky and it set the mood pretty well. I'll link it below so that you can use it for your own campaign if you want. Rin was a go-to person for much of the campaign. She helped with curses, recall knowledge checks, making some cryptic comments about Doriana's powers to help remind them of her whole thing. I had her working in tandem with Vandy from the Dawnflower Library and Morley Bent from Odd Stories, as they represent the combined knowledge of the occult, the religion, and the arcane in a town of Otari. I played her as like that hippie crystal girl, loves astrology that we all know, a little spacey, but very empathic. She should be ready to help the party at all times to the best of her abilities. But remember that as the campaign goes on, the party's going to surpass her knowledge, and she's likely going to transition to someone who can assist them with the town issues more as they come up later. I love her character artwork. She is amazing looking. I think she looks perfect. No notes at all. I do have the occasional issue with Paizo's artwork, but this looks great. All right. Located not far away is Galentine Deliveries. Galentine Deliveries handles deliveries to and fro from Absalon. None of my players got too invested in going to Absalon, but just in case yours do, you can have them do some work for Galentine Deliveries. If you're like me and you stick to common items in your games, but you have players who are still looking for the occasional rare item, you can have them place an order here, and when the delivery is inevitably waylaid somewhere, just outside of town, you can use this to show how the corruption of the Gauntlet is spreading. Have some familiar enemies attack the delivery people along with a creature that they haven't seen before. This is going to remind them they should be focused on the Gauntlet and not going on road trips. If they insist on going to Absalon, let them. But make sure that there's going to be something real nasty waiting for them when they come back. A creature attacked the town and they had to defend them. The people had to defend themselves. Some well-liked NPC has been hurt, brutally murdered. I don't judge, you do you. Something along those lines. Coming up, next is Blades for Glades. This is going to be a very important location in your campaign. Your players are going to be regular trips here from the beginning, and that's when you need to be driving home the social dynamics of three characters. Carmen Rajani, the town blacksmith, Osef Menhemes, the town mayor, and Doriana Menhemes, Osef's daughter, who, again, I aged her up to like her late 20s in my game and was Carmen's girlfriend. In my game, there was 3 takeaways that players needed to walk away with as soon as possible. 1. Carmen is a bitter man with a massive chip on his shoulder. He deeply resents Osif that he wouldn't let him keep the cooperative blade, the weapon of one of the members of the Rose Guard and Carmen's ancestor. Carmen has lied, cheated, stolen, and straight up tried to throw an election one of the 4 times that he ran up against Osif for mayor. However, he should also come across as maybe having a point about how shady it is for the mayor to also be the biggest businessman in town, and maybe he passed a few small laws that benefited himself. The player should have some questions about Osif, even if they have a bad feeling about the source of the info. He should also come across as a good boyfriend to Doriana. The balance between what they know about his past and what they see in his present should give them mixed feelings about Carmen, and that's a good thing. I had the party split right down the middle about what they thought about Carmen, and that's going to make important decisions that they're going to have to make later really meaningful. Doriana should be the neutral party between Carmen and Osif. She listens to Carmen's complaints about her father and sympathizes with him about certain things. But there's lines not to cross with his criticisms, and he knows that. Don't be afraid to have her scold him if he goes too far with his complaints. I had her frequently hanging out at Blades for Glades, delivering lunches, that kind of thing. She suffers from a lack of sleep and regular headaches, so make sure to bring that up whenever they see her. This goes back to the Motley Man in Chapter 7, so make sure to read ahead about that. Again, your purpose here is to foreshadow. Drop those breadcrumbs early. All the stuff that you do now is going to pay off later in your campaign. Osif should come across as a loving and concerned father towards Doriana and a controlling and possibly vengeful towards Carmen. Carmen's made a really big enemy here with Osif, and Osif should remind Carmen in a possibly overheard conversation by the PCs that he only exists in Otari at Osif's pleasure. Now, each interaction with the PCs should drive home the fact that they have two very different sides to both of their personalities. So next door to Blades for Glades is Odd Stories. Morley Bent here is home to one of the side quests of the adventure. Morley Bent is looking for some valuable books. The adventure is good about calling these out, which I appreciated. Morley Bent is also going to be a person that they go to often in the beginning to the middle of the campaign about all things arcane, so it doesn't hurt to have them run into him as well pretty early on. The northeastern corner is home to the Otari garrison and the Otari police. I didn't end up using them too much in my campaign, aside from having the guy with the best name in the entire campaign. Oh, my Lord and Savior, Lardis Longsaddle. Oh goodness, take a look at the majesty. Whew. This is Lardis. This is what peak male performance looks like. You don't have to like it, but it is true. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of many things, including his hairline and his super stylish mustache, but my wife won't let me grow one like that. It's very sad. It's on a slightly, not really more serious note, I guess. I have a serious dislike for super doofy fantasy names that are like 90% unpronounceable gibberish. And so I tend to just change names that look like somebody sneezed on the keyboard, which I love you, Paizo, but you got way too many of them. Gatewalkers, holy cow! I don't know what was happening with the names in that module, but though, Lardis Longsaddle. Coming into the center of town is Crow's Casks, run by a Tengu named Magaloy. 2 major personality points is what you get in the book for Magaloy. She likes to mix up crazy, possibly dangerous drinks, and has spent some formative years as a pirate, as you can tell by the artwork. Not shy about hiding the pirate past. But hey, what you gonna do? If you're a pirate, flaunt it. For me, I would direct any up-and-coming alchemist PCs over to her, which kind of fits in with the wild mixed drink angle. If you're up for it, you can add a little bit here with the rogue of your party. So let's say that you have a rogue who is not taking to Crook's Nook. You could say that Magaloy never really stopped being a pirate. Maybe Magaloy is a smarter version of Yin, whatever the hell her name is. Yin over in Crook's Nook. Magaloy didn't name her business something dumb like Crook's Nook and then hang up a big neon sign outside of her place that says criminal activity here, come on in. Maybe she's smarter than that. If you have somebody interested in the rogue life in your group and they're not really hitting it up over at Crook's Nook, throw Crow's casks at them. Maybe there's a different thieves guild operating in Otari, a smarter one. Maybe they have some darker interests in mind. Lots of dark books, lots of dark information over in those Abomination Vaults. Maybe she's got some stuff that she wants. You can always make up some MacGuffins or something, rituals and instructions with pages on each level. Now they have to go find them. Something like that. Who knows what Magaloy may want with this, but hey, it's up to you. Crook's Nook over here on the bridge is run by Yin. Yeah. Okay. Decent artwork, though. I'll give him that. It's Otari's worst kept secret. And it's also home to the local thieves guild, the Osprey Club. I honestly find this whole idea kind of ridiculous, honestly. Otari's evidently cool with having a bunch of thieves in town just because they prey on travelers. I don't know. Seems goofy. Seems like it would hurt the tourism industry, if nothing else. And likely really piss off Absalom if they were robbing people that were heading into the city. I understand that for game reasons, you want to have like a thieves guild around for your rogue or your shady fighter, who knows. But for me, this is kind of a miss. I think there's a quest here about tracking down Yin's men. Another one of the subquests. So you'll find out more about that in the next episode. Here in the town square is the Otari Market. Now, this has some interesting links to a location called the Stone Ring Pond. I like that this quest has people hearing two sides of the same question. The owner of the market, Kileno, lost his wife in a werewolf attack. The werewolf was one of the Stone Ring Pond druids, and even now, 30 years later, he still holds a grudge. Recently, a woman named Whirlywin showed up and has tried to make amends. She's one of the druids, but Kileno has maintained this grudge as he blames the druids for his wife's death, and he believes that the werewolf, who's a druid named Jal, is still alive. It turns out he's right. Jal is down in the 4th level, and I'll be covering that a little bit later on. If your party doesn't have a druid, put Whirlywin here in the market. Again, trying to smooth things over. Again with Kileno, and then let them witness an argument, preferably in front of the statue of his dead wife that he has there. This is going to demonstrate the whole situation real quickly to the party. In general, it's always preferable, I find, to show situations, not to tell the players about situations. Showing them arguing, letting the players overhear a situation for themselves is going to be way better than a stale info dump that they're going to forget about and tune out of inside like 10 seconds. The Otari fishery down in the south portion of the town here is where things got rolling for our friends from the beginner box. So welcome if you're one of us beginner box vets. I ran this campaign for some people who were brand new to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, coming out of like the OGL stuff, which was me as well. And things got messy for sure. I've seen people ask many times about like, I've run the beginner box, what do we do now? And I've seen this campaign mentioned a lot of times, I guess just because it takes place in the same town. I think it's a big ask to put new players through this, like brand new players through this campaign. You're throwing them in the deep end for sure. This campaign really expects a well-oiled combat machine. That's very high comprehension of the system. Players, especially a lot of people are coming from D&D 5th edition, who have developed the habits that work in that system, are going to quickly find that those habits are going to get their PCs some free real estate down at the Otari graveyard. I've seen it happen. Now, personally, I would choose a different campaign to introduce new players to. Your mileage may vary. I'm sure lots of people out there are going to write in the comments, I did it and everything was just fine. Congratulations. I'm glad. But it was rough for my groups. Most of them all made it. Again, some new holes in the graveyard. On the west side of town is a little place called the Ruins of the Thirsty Alpaca. Now, if your games run anything like mine, it is not too long before they start to drift off the map story-wise. It's just their nature. Getting all the players moving in one direction is like herding cats. So if you're ready to start really stretching your GM muscles, being a bit creative, making up things on the fly, digging into their backstories, that kind of thing, this is kind of a good place to start that ball rolling. The Ruins of the Thirsty Alpaca is basically like a question mark on the map, where you can just put in your own stuff. The backstory says something about kobolds who are responsible for the building's collapse here, but really you can just put whatever you want. Yeah, this is a good point. If you have something that you want to link back to your characters, just stick it in here. So Inkleholt Manor, along with Churtell Manor, are the homes of the families that operate the two lumber companies that compete with Otari Lumber. Alimora Inkleholtz, another one of these fantastic fantasy names, has divested her interests and has invested in the education of the town, which has bought her a lot of goodwill. She's been encouraged to run for mayor, but supposedly she's happy just building her business and building her legacy. I have some big ideas about this, but I'm going to introduce the second family first. Rab Churtell, this totally not greasy looking gentleman, runs Churtell Timber, and things have taken a turn for the worse for him lately. The book says that the Churtell Consortium is responsible for this, but I prefer to think of Rab as just a hapless loser, kind of like Gil the salesman from The Simpsons. He's just kind of a loser, couldn't find his ass, he was using both hands. If you're up for a bit of politics, these two can provide a pretty interesting role in your campaign. Here's another change you can make to keep Otari interesting is to set it during the election season. As the campaign begins, candidates are just beginning to be selected, with Osef as the incumbent. Most people think that it's a foregone conclusion that Osef is going to win, but this year there's a shock candidate, Carmen, with the backing of Inkleholt and Churtell. Why? Well, I'll get into that in a future episode, but it has to do with the dark forces that have Carmen in their sights. This isn't something you really need to get into right away at the beginning of the campaign, but I'll cover more about this in a future episode. I would just tell them for now that there are election notices being put up and let them see that election season is coming soon. The Rowdy Rockfish is home to another side quest. Brelda Vankervale has lost her son Lazda, who was last seen leaving town following a hooded figure who was holding a lantern over a year ago. I would call attention to this by having Brelda hanging missing posters outside of the Rowdy Rockfish, probably describing how she's replacing the very old and worn posters of the same thing. I tried to have these quest NPCs up and around town, all of them, bumping into the PCs every few sessions just to keep the memories fresh about them. It's one thing I really like about this campaign as opposed to the more globe-trotting ones, is that because you're in this very small town for a long time, you really get to dig deep into one location instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep. I wish more campaigns took place in smaller scale locations. A little farther south is the Dawnflower Library. You can expect regular trips to this location in your campaign all throughout the entire thing. For me, the temple was a frequent source of early healing and curse/disease healing. They also use the temple as a place to conduct recall knowledge checks, along with the bonus that I usually gave them, because there's some tough enemies and they're really going to need this. Vandy, the head priestess, is also one of the pillars of the community. Her, along with Rin and Morley-Bintz, are your three sources of main magics. I didn't find a lot of use for primal in my campaigns. Your mileage may vary. You can always use Whirlwind for that. So have these characters meet up pretty frequently with your PCs. If they're having any kind of trouble with a monster or a situation, these people should be like the council for your players. Northwest of town is the Stone Ring Pond. The Stone Ring Pond is linked with the Otari Market quest with Jaw the Werewolf and Kileno's dead wife. Whirlwind here is your source of primal knowledge locally. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a huge demand thing for me in the two campaigns that I ran. Again, maybe for you it will be. She's there if you need her. If you have any druids, rangers, outdoorsy types who are spending a lot of time outside of town, the Stone Ring druids can give advice or help with them with questions they may have about what's going on around town. I also incorporated a bit of industrial sabotage into my campaign with the Stone Ring Druids, and they were able to help my PCs with a sticky situation they found themselves in the middle of. Again, future video. Lastly, but not leastly, we come to the final home of many a PC, the Otari Graveyard. Once they hit level 2, you're going to run the Dead Tide event, which can see the Gauntlet firing with malicious intent for the very first time, raising the dead and the stakes for this adventure. Aside from Dead Tide, I would use similar events if the PCs start to get too distracted by Absalon or shiny objects. They're throwing rocks at the sun or something. I don't know what PCs do these days. So just if they start to get distracted, hit them again. And usually if they're still focused on their adventure, hit them again. Basically, this campaign is just about hitting them again and again and again. It's good stuff. Later on in the campaign, once they're down to like levels 5, 6, 7, if they start to get distracted, you can have a NPC get kidnapped, taken down to level 4 to repower the Gauntlet after they've dealt with that situation. As far as who might be doing this in this future Dead Tide-ish event, make sure you're picking up somebody that have either run into before and who escaped, or they've at least heard of. Give them an enemy like a 5th level scroll of translocate and have them, talk some BS to the party, and then, twist the knife and then cackle and, bamf out of there, and leave a minion tough enough to give the PCs a good fight, and then have them be able to meet them back on level 4. This is going to turn up the heat on any kind of distracted parties and remind them what they're actually doing here. If you really want to mess with your party and you've had a character death, have Belcora inhabit the corpse, and giving them an appropriate stat block to give your PCs a nice fight against their former friend. Is that something that, looking at Belcora's stat block, that she can technically do? No, it isn't. But you're the GM, and you don't have to care about what the stat block says. Phew, well, I think that is it for Otari now. I hope that helped give you some ideas for your own campaign, and you certainly don't have to do the things the way that I did them. Take what works, chuck the rest, and make the adventure totally your own. Stay tuned for future episodes where I will break down further levels of the vault and expand on the things that I started here in this video. If you'd like to play a game with me, check out the link below for my Start Playing profile and see what I'm running these days. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. Tell me your cat's name in the comments or something if you want to, and give that subscribe button a click. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Game Meowster.